You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mickey's Shiny Set Out, show number 499, 9 and 90 and 400. Ooh-yo, that's a lot of shows. This is Listener Funded Radio, so please do donate if you can. You can buy some of the awesome merch that's available as well from the website. You can have a look at that. It's probably stuff that interests you anyway. If you're listening to the station, it's definitely stuff that interests you. Take my word for it. And you can subscribe to listen to all the archives, which have pretty much all the shows of all the hosts over the last few years. So you can, delve into it and binge it, if you will. That's a new thing, right? With this lockdown culture we're in, you're binging things now. So there's a good bit of stuff you can binge on. Some good information, some really great hosts, great guests, etc., etc. But we are at show number 499, and while we don't want to do a clip show, is it time for a clip show yet?
Sure.
We do. Sure, why not, right? We do want to talk a little bit about the last 10 or so years in ahead of show number 500, which is going to start the Hypothesis show cycle again. Well, what did we try to accomplish with this show? I mean, it came out of the blue for me. Dave, maybe not as surprised as I was, but certainly he surprised me with a call some 10 years ago saying, "Hey, Mick, you want to do a radio show? You want to do a radio?" I said, "Okay." We prepared. Well, yeah, I think it was like a one-pager for show notes we prepared for the first show. And we've covered a lot in the years since, but our intention has always been to shine a light in dark corners, but also trying to create some kind of narrative of everything. That's hard to do, and I don't know if you all feel that it was successful, but all things are connected. All things are essentially touching each other in many ways. So we like to look at phenomena separately, and we've spoken about this before, Dave, right? So some people like UFOs, they're interested in UFOs. Other people are interested in Bigfoot. Other people, again, are interested in ancient civilizations. Other people, again, are interested in vaccinations and the medical establishment conspiracies. Other people, again, are interested in Montauk and mind control, and on it goes. I mean, there's a conspiracy, or there's something strange and weird for pretty much anyone out there that is looking for it. The truth, though, that we've come to realize over the last 10 years, and maybe even before that, but certainly over the last 10 years, is that you can't really separate any of these things, right? And again, for a phenomenon to be real, okay, be it a UFO or Bigfoot or government conspiracy to control your mind, whatever it is, you only have to have one instance of that to be true. You don't need any more than that. One unidentified flying object will make it a true thing. One true Bigfoot sighting will make the Bigfoot phenomenon a true thing, and on it goes. So there's no extraordinary evidence required, as some people would claim. It's just normal evidence, like one thing. If you have one true case of anything, and that goes for hauntings and poltergeists, it goes for anything. If there's one true thing, then it's a thing. So people talk about conspiracy theorists, us, I guess, to some extent. And I'd like to make a point before I go on that I'm a conspiracy factist. I'm interested in conspiracy facts. Theories are a dime a dozen. I really want to know about the facts that underlie, these conspiracies. Because conspiracies, and that's really the point I'm making here, are real. Conspiracy is a word in the English language that denotes the fact that sometimes people get together and work toward a common goal in secret that might or might not be beneficial to others. That's a conspiracy. Usually, clandestine actions, people getting together in secret to plan or do something. That's a conspiracy. Okay? And it happens, believe it or not. People do that. Okay? Criminal conspiracies are common. Political conspiracies are common. But when we talk about conspiracy theories in general, it's a very negative term. And it's become that way over time. Okay? Bismarck, I think it was Bismarck, I could be wrong, but I think Bismarck said there's no such thing as a coincidence in politics or diplomatic relations. There's no, everything that happens, he says, like this is almost 150 years ago now, everything that happens happens for a reason. There is no coincidence out there in the world. These are all actions that have a reason, and the reason is usually something that was planned. I mean, occasionally things just happen, sure enough. But if you think that you can assassinate a president by yourself, right, and get away with it, that's a highly unlikely scenario, right? I'm not saying that you can't. I'm talking about American president here specifically. Mm-hmm. But there's always a reason, and you have to look into history as to why these things are happening. Why are presidents being assassinated? Oh, it's a disgruntled lone nutter. No. Why are people being assassinated? The Kennedys, Martin Luther King, John Lennon. The list goes on. The Haitian president. And but any assassination, any mysterious death. Well, his plane flew into the side of a mountain. How often have we seen that? And there was a senator or some kind of politician or a number of politicians
car crashes.
On board. Car crashes. There was a whole Polish delegation of really high-ranking politicians that crashed on the way to Russia. What a coincidence, right?
Those slippery floors and open windows.
No, there is that.
That's another one.
So, yeah, and you don't have to really look very far to look at it. And I'll give you a simple example here in Australia. There was the city council in Wollongong. They were all let go. They were all fired, and I don't know if they're criminal charges or not, because they're all corrupt. The entire city council in Wollongong was corrupt. Idi Abiy, I think he was a federal politician. He was corrupt. Mm-hmm. The corrupt, and you know what's funny in Australia? We don't have a national anti-corruption body. We have one for the states.
That's right.
Each state has one, right? But there's nothing on a federal level.
And their jurisdiction ends at the county line, the state line. Yeah.
State line, exactly. And federally, they're dragging their feet. Oh no, we're putting a program together. Yeah, it's like the UN. It's a tiger with no teeth. There's no serious will to stamp out corruption. And corruption, again, that's also a form of conspiracy, right? Because you're getting, so there's an interest group and they're going to give you money or favors or whatever, maybe a ski holiday, and in turn you do something for them, but you don't tell anyone about it because if it came out, you'll be hung, right? So that is a conspiracy too. So conspiracies are all around us all the time.
Meki, you could simply, this is alleged, by the way, you could simply be the Premier of New South Wales and you could be dating a developer, and you could be approving all of the things they want to get done.
Yeah, completely. And even nepotism, yeah, exactly. So this is favoritism and nepotism. They go hand in hand with these conspiracies, and it is really important to understand that conspiracies are real. I will never forget this because I was there when he said it. George Bush Jr. Mm-hmm. This was hours after the events of that September day.
I know it isn't a conspiracy theory.
We shall never allow I think he said crazy. Mm-hmm. We shall never allow crazy conspiracy theories to surface and obscure the truth or whatever. He wasn't quite as eloquent. No, but the essence of what he said was, as soon as conspiracy theories come up, they're wrong. That's what he was saying to everybody.
And why would they be the words in the first hours after something like 9/11?
It was astounding. Well, look, there are many schools of thought here. My school of thought is, of course, it's because it was if not planned or staged, certainly in a loud event. What do I mean by allowed? So nobody wanted to enter World War II. When I say nobody, I'm talking about the American public. They had no interest. World War I was quite enough, thank you very much. So, but the establishment in America, the elite, if you want to call them that, they did want to
the war machine. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, right? And help, and for various reasons, and so how do we do that now? The Japanese were in the Pacific and clearly stupid that they attacked America. It was just a stupid thing to do until they had consolidated all of the Pacific. But again, hindsight is 20/20. So they planned this attack on Pearl Harbor, and no one will dispute that it happened. The Pearl Harbor attack did happen. What you might not know is that the the Pacific Fleet was not anchored there. Some older ships were, but the majority of the serviceable ships were not at Pearl Harbor at the time. They had been moved out. Some ships were there, so you need a target, right? But these were older ships. Remember that. So the theory is, or what has been alleged, and there's some evidence to it, is that the administration knew about the attack well in advance. They could have evacuated all of Pearl Harbor. They could have done. There would have been no casualties, or very, very few. But they decided to let it happen. Why? Well, it was Pearl Harbor that swayed the public's opinion. Oh, it was this cowardly sneak attack by the Japanese on the Americans in Pearl Harbor, etc., etc. And therefore now we must strike back. And that's how America got into World War II, attacking the ally of the Japanese, Germany, in Europe as well. So there was a Pacific theater of war and there was a European theater of war. And America got into both. And that was really the turning point for America as far as the military-industrial complex was concerned, because America made a lot of money from that, but America also altered its geopolitical trajectory. Because prior to World War II and the UN, America wanted no bar of global politics.
That's right.
Okay? America had no interest. They weren't part of the League of Nations. They followed the Monroe Doctrine. Okay. And Woodrow Wilson said, "No, I'm not going to be part of the League of Nations. You just work it out for yourselves. Thank you very much." And off he went.
Yeah, we've got our own thing.
So,
don't worry about it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. America. The slogan was "America for the Americans," right? And fair enough too. And this is really something that Trump is sort of trying to bring back. And I got an issue with it. I mean, it's not new. Trump is not trying something new. I mean, it's been American policy for a long time prior to World War II, right? And so there was this event that was allowed to happen. Now, is this really completely unbelievable? The Northwoods papers show us, these are released papers from the CIA, that they needed a pretext to deal with the Cubans. They didn't like having a communist enclave so close to American soil. It's really not very far from the Florida coast, really very close, right? So what do? Well, we don't want to be seen as starting anything here, the Bay of Pigs disaster notwithstanding. And in fact, it was mostly exiled Cubans that were fighting there. But what do we do then? Okay, well, we have to do something that makes it look like the Cubans did it. So they were going to, crash a plane, that would be falsely claimed was
basketballers.
Yes, yeah, American basketballers. They would, it would be falsely claimed afterwards that the Cubans had hijacked and crashed it or whatever it might have been, right? So that was the plan. It never actually eventuated, but it was a plan the CIA hatched back in the 1950s. Okay, so it is not a completely unheard of scenario when got planes crashing under false pretenses. So I'm talking about obviously after September events here. But at the Reichstagsbrand, one of my favorite examples, right? Hitler was elected into power, that is true, but he didn't have a majority government, right? He was just part of a coalition. It took the burning down of the parliamentary building in Berlin to let him invoke the emergency laws, right? Notstandsgesetze, and that gave him pretty much unprecedented and almost dictatorial power. And he blamed the communists for it. So the communists were actually the first people that were shipped off to the concentration camps, because they were the main force in Germany that was opposing the Nazis, the communists, and the trade union movement, etc., etc. So what happened? So to burn it down and to blame the communists, and hey presto, we have got Germany in our back pocket, thank you very much, and we never had a majority government. The Germans never voted us all into power. So let's be very clear here. These conspiracies are actually real. They're a fact. You can look it up yourself, especially the Reichstagsbrand. And yet still we wish to maintain this level of ignorance around what actually happens in politics. Politicians are sending people into harm's way every day, Dave. Every day.
Yep, that's right.
You declare a war, right? You're putting your own people in harm's way, and you're putting the people that you're attacking in harm's way, deliberately, on purpose. Okay, Obama more than Bush, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not a Republican or Democrat thing, and other nations as well. Obviously, other nations, they fight wars. So, but the point here is that conspiracies are a thing, and calling someone a conspiracy theorist has become such a negative moniker that you immediately think of them as some kind of crazy person with a tinfoil hat. I mean, that's what we call the show, of course, Shiny Side Out in reference to the tinfoil hat. But it is important to understand that is a deliberate effort. It's a propaganda effort to discredit people that question the accepted narrative. Right? And that's what I hope, Dave, we've been trying to bring to people, to question the narrative.
Because remember, it was the CIA that termed conspiracy theorist and added the derogatory term, defined it as a derogatory term to downplay anyone researching anything pretty much that they were up to.
Yeah, absolutely.
They wanted to hide behind the fact that they were doing stuff that was, well, maybe a little bit visible, and if people tied it all together, it would lead them back to us, being the CIA. And so,
speaking of the CIA, Dave, do you think the United States have a drug problem? It's a trick question.
Of course, yes. But not to the CIA. It's not a drug problem.
There are three distinct ways
business
in drug abuse and drug problems that arose in the United States. The first wave happened in toward the closing hours of the Vietnam War. But what happened was that the CIA and other, I'm sure, three-letter agencies, maybe even agencies with no letters at all, smuggled, heroin from Vietnam, and Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam formed this golden triangle of heroin production. They smuggled heroin in the body bags of American GIs into America, into the inner cities in America, in order to boost their budget. I mean, this is $1 billion operation. Okay, they eventually, got a hold of the Taliban and Afghanistan, etc., to cut out the middlemen and get more profits flowing into their coffers. But that's the thing. That's the first wave. Second wave. That happened in the aftermath of the South American adventures that were undertaken in especially on behalf of the banana producers. I know this sounds crazy, but the term banana republics was forged in light of the banana companies out of America trying to control South American banana producers. So they would send military in there. Now, after the bananas were sort of under control and all that, they realized that they could grow cocoa plants. So they grew cocoa plants in South America really well. And the production was ramped up. So those banana producers and the unnamed agencies, shipped massive amounts of cocaine into the United States. Again, in many various forms, which was taken over by other Mexican cartels, Colombians, etc., etc. But it started as an activity by the agencies, right, and by the larger, banana corporations, if you believe it or not. And that, again, brought billions and billions into the coffers of the agencies as well. I mean, massive business. And then the third wave of problems that you see unraveling the American fabric was the overprescription of painkillers to soccer moms, to, middle-aged corporate
the opioid
people,
problem, yeah.
Yeah, correct. So once, because the thing is, obviously, you can't get painkillers prescribed forever. You don't, but long enough to become addicted. Now, if this was deliberate or inadvertent or whatever, it's something that happened. So they could no longer legally fill their prescription. So they went and tried to get their fix differently, elsewhere, heroin or your oxycodone, which was the hillbilly heroin. So they tried to get their hands on these medications as best as they could. So the first two waves were designed to. So the first wave was designed to destroy the inner cities, the poorer, right? The poor, because heroin was a relatively cheap drug, believe it or not, and completely addictive. I mean, heroin addiction is horrific. The second wave was designed as a more, a higher class drug, cocaine, right? You find, so there are two classes of people in the drug world, more than that, but ultimately you've got the heroin users, which are the lower socioeconomic scale, not always, but generally speaking, and you've got cocaine users, which belong to the higher spectrum of the socioeconomic scale. And then you've got the people that go on.
So now you've got weed and you've got crack cocaine.
Yeah, so crack cocaine is worse. So weed in and of itself, it's highly unlikely to be, number one, a gateway drug, and number two, to really harm you long term. You have more harm coming out of alcohol abuse than you have come out of people smoking weed.
Right.
That's a fact. That's just how it is, right? Now, can it happen? Sure. I mean, depending on what your family history is and what your own chemical, brain makeup is, overuse of cannabis can lead to psychosis. All right, it can, of course, it can. But it's a highly unlikely scenario. Whereas heroin that'll definitely fry you. And see, cocaine, well, it was like a high-end drug, if you will. Crack cocaine is not. Crack cocaine is cheap, like heroin, and again, meant to destroy the lower classes.
I've seen the streets of Milwaukee now these days.
Oh,
absolutely! It's so sad to see all of those lives turn out that way. I mean, the parents that had those children probably never envisaged a world where we would have the equivalent of zombies walking around.
Oh, horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific.
It's so sad. And if Mackie, one thing that got me was that they changed the law for theft from a shop to be $1,000 and greater.
Oh yeah, people stealing food and things. Right?
And they take a calculator in and decide when they have to leave the store, when their bag is full.
Yeah, in Germany, which is fair enough too. In Germany, there's no law against stealing food, and that harks back to the really hard times between the wars. Absolutely.
Not like England, Mackie. You get sent to Australia.
Yeah. You stole a loaf of bread. Oh my God, criminal psychopath, off to England, off to Australia. Yeah. But so how do you get the middle class though? And this is where the third wave comes in, right? The overprescription of opioids. I'm not saying that was a deliberate thing. Maybe it was, but the point is, it worked like a charm.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a really big issue. And people might ask, "Oh, Mickey, that's pretty far fetched. Thank you very much." Well, no, because there's historic precedent for this. I'll give you two precedents where drugs were used to try to control nations and individuals. Number one, you might have heard of the assassins. Now, the assassins, there's several schools of thought. One of them says that the assassin name comes from the word hashishi, or hashishin, meaning the users of hashish, which is opium. And essentially what
hashish isn't. Hashish is the resin, only the resin from the marijuana plants.
Yeah, but they also mixed it with opium to come up with what assassins.
Oh, right. But okay.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So, but what it did, so they gave it there was this assassin king, if you will, in the Levant, in the Middle East, and he would get these specific people, and he would get them drugged, and then he would take them to a garden, and he said, "This is paradise," and it was beautiful, full of everything that you could imagine you want, and he let them be there for days, weeks, months, whatever it might be, and then he would take them out, and he said, "Okay, if you want to go back, you have to do X, Y, and Z for me." So that's how he controlled the individual to do what they wanted, becoming master assassins. That's one of the stories, anyway. Interesting story.
Cool.
But the other story I want to share with you are the Opium Wars. If you haven't heard about the Opium Wars, I really urge you to look them up. It's how the British East India Company tried to control China. China was big, unwieldy empire, not really a threat to the UK or the British Empire at the time, but certainly powerful enough to that it needed to be controlled. And the British tried to control it by addicting vast tracts of the Chinese population to opium. And there was a rebellion, and there's a war fought around it. And it is also important to understand that's why Mao went through all the cities that he marched through on his long march, and literally burned down the opium houses, killed all the drug dealers, and killed all the addicts, because opium almost broke China. The British Empire almost broke China with opium addiction. Okay, so it's not a new thing. It's not a new thought that you can use these drugs to control people. And if you read Brave New World, you get Soma, right? Aldous Huxley's drug of choice to control the population. In that novel, by the way, Dave, government prescribed drugs.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to take them. So that's what we're seeing, right? And this is it's a real thing. These are real things, everybody. This is not some kind of crazy, theory that I'm sprouting here with no basis in evidence, no basis in fact or in reality. It's what happened. It's history. And if you can't say, again, coming back to conspiracy theorists or conspiracy factists, you can't dismiss all of these things. You can dismiss some, but once you've done your actual own research, right? I mean, there was this LA police officer, and he may have been an FBI officer. I'm not sure, but he was killed because he accused the CIA of bringing drugs into LA. I forget his name, but it was a huge, hoo-ha back. I think it was back in the 90s or even the 80s. But he he stepped up and said, "Hey, this is happening. The CIA is bringing drugs in." I want to say he was a FBI, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that it was LA. Right? And he was killed. He was killed. Right? It's what happened. It's a thing. And here we are, happy in our cocoons, Dave, thinking, it's all good. We're good. It's crazy. But what do you take away from the last 10 years?
Oh, goodness. Start. Okay, I'll start. Okay. If I was going to just for instance, if I was going to be, I'm going to add to what you're saying. If I was Nostradamus for a minute, right, and I had to write some quatrains, I don't think I would have predicted the state of the planet. If it doesn't matter when I go back in time to, I don't think I didn't know very much. All right, if we're talking about how much research that we've done since we go back to 2012, yeah. I didn't think everything was connected. I thought everything was kind of little, compartmentalized. I believe that's kind of the way the government works. But ultimately, as we've learned, we've discovered that there is someone above those compartments. There is a structure to keep it compartmentalized. We've discovered that, I think this is really, really interesting, that we've discovered how connected everything is. Not just that they are connected, but just to what extent are they connected? To the more about also the human condition of infallibility. Yeah, I said that so slow that I reminded myself of, I've got a musical brain, I can't help it. So whether there's the rhythm of a sentence or just a reference to something, I already know the rest of it. My brain's already lined it up, ready to go. So if I was playing a musical instrument and someone varied that, the theme of the music, I'd be able to just blend straight in with it, not having to think at all, pre-stacked. So compartmentalized, yes. So that description, however, wiped my memory. If it wasn't for the proximity of the magnetic coils, I've seemed to have lost my short-term memory. That, and combined with the loss of my short-term memory, seems to be caused by the magnetic coils. And it's a joke from Red Dwarf. So when I've looked back at how we've evolved, Meki and I, also through this time, I remember wanting to tell everybody I knew about the new thing that I found, the new information that I found out, the discovery, the conspiracy that I've come across, and doesn't have to have been one that was already known, but rather a connection that I've made between some things that seem plausible. And I think connecting things together that already exist it seems easy, but finding the motive, I think you need to have the thing that does the harm. You've got to have the person willing to do it. They've got to be in the situation they're able to enact it, and have those other things with them at the time. And whether they think they can get away with it or not, that also has to play into their ability to orchestrate something. So when you can, it could be the thing, could be that, you've got to follow the money to get to the, or you've got to deploy something, or you've got to enact a plan to be able to reach an objective. All of those things all fall into place once you've got a couple of pieces. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where only a couple of pieces down, you start to get a picture, but you don't have all the details yet. It's about hunting down those last few pieces. I think that's usually the challenge.
I like that analogy. I like that.
It's kind of what because it's start the picture. Once you realize there's a picture there, it's amazing how quickly you can piece things into it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you make it up. How easily other things are then found to be connected. One of those, an easy example, Mickey, is when we were talking, I think, with Lloyd Pye. This is in episode 13. This is 499 now, right? And we'll never have that opportunity again. No. Rest in peace. When he was saying that the UFO people don't talk to the Sasquatch people, and he said, I don't know why, because when I was looking into it, I found that there were sightings of UFOs from one side of a mountain, and on the other side, in the same period, there were sightings of a Bigfoot. And I know that there was a missing persons thing where there's neatly folded clothes on one side of a mountain. On the other side, some fishermen saw some lights disappear down the other side of the mountain. And then this guy's gone, never to ever be seen again, right? Or then he ended up getting a mangled arm and found in a hideous way. So there's all sorts of aliens out there, apparently. So when in his surprise, Lloyd Pye's surprise, that these things seem to have some connection, not always, but some connections. But the people refused to want to hear that there were connections because, right? So the Sasquatch people, who were indeed very serious about, and so the UFO people, very serious about their art and their discovery and their information, didn't want it clouded with the UFO information because they saw the UFO people as being completely nuts.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they didn't want theirs to be muddied into it because it would lose their credibility. Likewise, the other way around. Now, if you look at all of the stuff that we've spoken about, and we've researched, and we've spoken to each one of these people, Mickey, I'm on our website right now, right, and I'm looking at all of the guests that we've had, and when we've been able to interview them, and look. Like you in your opening, I never thought I'd be able to have the opportunity to talk to the people who I've seen on TV.
Yes.
Or talk to the authors who have written a tremendous book.
Yes. Imagine
that ability, Mickey, when we were in high school.
Oh, it would have been a
Could you imagine that? So if most of the books we had at school, the authors were long dead, but if it were possible, and we had reprints, if it were possible to actually have an author who was alive and well, and rather than simply coming up, fabricating an answer, what do you think the author meant when they said this? You could just ask them. You could do the Bill and Ted thing.
Yes.
Socrates.
Socrates. You're wrong.
You should travel, buddy. Yeah.
Beethoven.
Beethoven. Yeah. You could simply ask them what they were like. Well, what do they think? Because Meki, when I was the most preposterous question that I look as a more mature person now than I was when I was doing modern history and learning about Hitler, was what was going through Hitler's mind when he was invading Poland. I don't know, maybe he left the iron on. I don't know. Right? So from my perspective, yeah, the guy had he had an objective. He had a team of people. He wanted that. He needed to do. He had an outcome. He's clearly outcome based. And when his advisors had to end up lying to him because he was so full of his belief that he was winning, and he wouldn't listen to a word that he wasn't. Right. This was near the end with the Panzer tanks. Let's just move all of the other ones there. If we don't have any, get him out. Right. I think if it was an opportunity ever to be able to have that conversation, I know Susan Chancellor, Andy Thomas, Bill Bryson, oh my goodness, Kathleen Marden, yeah, all of the people, Thomas J. Wolfenden, I remember as well.
Yeah.
All of these people, look, it's been enriching. It's enriched our experience. It's certainly matured me and the way that I think about things now. Do you remember, Meki, the Neil deGrasse Tyson explanation of 2029 and 2036?
Yeah.
The Apophis experience, that this was right before he was maybe advised that he shouldn't, speak off script any longer. And now his messaging is, look, there's no problems. But it moved on, Don't worry about that stuff. It's all hooey, It was early days. The data was, too fresh. We couldn't work it out. And I was wrong. Yeah, but that's funny because now we have seed banks. We have, 3 billionaires trying to get off the planet in a hurry. And when by? 2036. Yeah, so there's things going on, and just because you're not read into it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, if you don't happen to know what the truth is, because there's the truth and then there's the truth. So there's a truth message that we're told by the media in hand with the governments of the world. Social media has kind of thrown all that into a spin where they don't actually have that control like they used to have the control, where what was that a famous American newsreader who was the most trusted voice?
Oh yeah, I forget his name, but I know exactly. I got his face. Yes,
yeah, me too. He was the voice of the government. People didn't see that. They saw he was the voice of the truth. But it's turned out that everything that was being told was all approved. And that all of the news agencies and all the media outlets have government, not informants, but let's say operatives, working in there to ensure that their messaging is steered in the correct direction, or at least there's no surprises.
Yeah. Do you remember there was this clip, and I think I saw it on YouTube, Facebook, doesn't really matter, but I saw this clip from maybe 20, 30, maybe even 40 different stations across America with the same news story.
The same,
you had
same script.
40, same words. Exactly,
in fact, you know what it was? Do you know what it was? It's okay to buy yourself something at Christmas. Laugh.
Oh,
right?
Man.
Because it was about the retail going under at Christmas time. It was a GFC, and they were trying to encourage people to go out and spend money. And the message from like 30 different outlets was the same script, and they all read it, and it would all had their little programmed laugh in there, like it was, square bracket laugh. And some of them sold the message really well, but then they did it side by side as a full screen of 30 different newsreaders reading the same script, and it was wow.
Do you remember when I was unfriended? I had a friend. This goes back to my primary school in Germany. I won't mention his name, but he became a journalist, I think, in America.
Oh, that's right.
And we just started talking on Facebook. We hadn't talked to each other for probably 20 years. And hey, how you doing? Oh, yeah, I'm good. What are you doing? That, this, that. And I just posted something, and this was around media ownership. And back in the 50s,
that's right.
specifically
marathon,
American,
marathon discussion.
Oh, it was something else. But I know, right? But essentially, it was only really American media ownership. But you can certainly expand it to global media ownership. But in America, there were back in the 50s, several hundred independent news producers, papers, radios, TV stations, etc. Right? Independent though. And there were always Reuters and places like that where everybody got the news. But a lot of people had their own reporters in the field. They just did. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, several hundred people that would own this, several hundred interest groups even, right?
Yeah.
But then today, and this was probably 10, 15 years ago, there were only six corporations that owned 90% of the news in America, maybe more. And I thought, well, this is a bit dangerous. It's a dangerous thing. We should have diversity in media ownership so you get all the opinions that you need. And my God, did he let fly? No, you don't know what you're talking about. So I tried to, have a coherent conversation, like a debate. And before I knew it, because he didn't answer my points, right? I was unfriended. Yeah, I was unfriended. I was good. What? No, I thought we were gonna have a discourse. He's a journalist, right? So this really took me back a little, because you have to understand that the more diverse the landscape of the media is, and I'm talking about the news media here, right? People that bring you news, not opinions, but news. The better off we are, because you get different points of view. Right? You should, if you have any chance at all to watch anything but mainstream, please do, or even if it's another country's mainstream. You'll be astounded what kind of different information you get. Very different coverage of the same item. I watch, like I said, German news as a regular thing. I watch the English version of RT. Al Jazeera has sold out, I think, but I still watch them. And other news outlets, such as they present themselves. We're lucky in Australia. SBS broadcasts them every day. Every day, starting in the morning, we have news pumped to us with maybe even a minimal delay from all around the world, in the original language. So if you speak that language, you can watch it. But you can go to online as well. You can go online and watch things there. I mean, there are people. I think it's called the People Reporters or whatever it's called, that are out there. Just they're broadcasting their version of things, which is a limited view, but they're inside a protest crowd, for example, right? So you might never get the footage from inside a protest crowd. All you get is what the mainstream media gives you, where it was obvious, all the protests are all violent. But what the guy, though, on the ground gives you something completely different. No, they weren't all violent. For example.
Sort of similar to when the election campaign in the US was full and strong, and the media was showing a close-up of a candidate, and then I was watching a person doing a live stream, and the person turned around, it was empty.
Yeah,
there was no one there.
I know, right?
And the message appeared as though there was, you assumed mistakenly that there was a huge audience, like, oh my goodness, and that it was equivalent to the other candidate, and their audience. But the message is there. You see what you want to see. You even translate what they say into the words you want them to hear, like you want to hear from them, and that's based on emotional connection.
Yeah,
and that's the power of social media. And Meki, I'm going to say, I said it in the first hour: Manchurian candidates. If social media, because I love the leader.
No, I love the leader.
I love them more.
I said it first. Right. I was thinking it first.
I was thinking it first. I didn't say it. So the ability for social media to steer the community is an amazing skill, right? But the use of it for bad, it's as likely as the steering of us to all be happy little Vegemites. They could psychologically, actually couldn't. They are, I would say, and I'm alleging it, they are steering people whose sociological profile, or maybe psychological profile, suits their need.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's totally a thing. So don't get me in charge of that and rods from God, right? Because you could make sleepers everywhere. You know, what was that? Platinum Rosebud from a show that I used to watch. Right? That's all they had to say into the ear of the person on the phone, and they hung up and went and acted a deed. So, look, it's completely a thing. No, I don't want to say what I typed into our chat, but I know that the press in Australia, we used to have independent newspapers, and there was one of the two brands who bought all the independent newspapers and then dismantled them to get rid of the competition. And the competition watchdog said nothing. It's probably all good, right? They were going under or something, right? Like all those trees just rotting in the forest, Mackie.
How many news could there possibly be, Dave?
Oh, all of it, right?
Just
the one message.
If it doesn't agree with the Bible, let's just burn those books. Either they agree, you don't need them, or they don't agree, in which case you should burn them. So just burn them all.
Yeah. So it's the similar, yes, once you start to control the messaging, today's verbiage on burning the books is controlling the messaging. Once you've got 100% control of the messaging, you can say what you want. And there isn't any way to dispute it. There isn't any alternate messaging out there. The social media has this double-edged sword capability from the parasitic class who will use it for their goal. But the opposite side of that is that we have ability to spread information that isn't the desired message.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that can counter their effects. The net effect is then, they have to, downplay us. They've got to alienate people. They've got to force people's belief to steer them all back into the herd. Mm-hmm. You can't have these outliers thinking just whatever they want, Mackie.
That's exactly right.
And this is where we're at. So if we were warned by anything, and I'm going to take us to one of my favorite show topics of all time, and that is 1984. We did a show, Mackie, 1984 is now.
Yes, we did.
And that was October 2013.
Yes. It happened. And you read it, and you're probably horrified in some instances. Mm-hmm. You're thinking, it could never happen. This is look. I mean, it's a work of fiction. But then you have to take a step back and you look at rendition.
Yep.
You look at the way media is controlled. You look at doublespeak, which was a term which was coined by 1984. Right? It was actually in the book Doublespeak, and then you look at politicians and what they say and how they say it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this moment for me when the penny dropped. There was someone talking about the invasion of Afghanistan, and someone asked. This was a press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Are these the same people we supported like 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
Like a minute ago, yeah.
And the person there was an American official. I don't know who. It wasn't the top echelon, but it was an official. No, we're talking about now. Forget that. Now we're talking about now. Forget the past.
That was a minute ago. Come on, what are you talking about?
I know.
Keep up.
But see, in 1984, we had war with Oceania. No, we're not. They've always been our friends. We had war with West Pekia, whatever. I can't remember what these power blocks were called, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've always been their friends. No, we were at war with them yesterday. No, you're wrong.
You were there at the
and-
lunch appointment. We were friends, right?
I know,
Yeah.
and we don't need a rat nibbling at our face like was described in the movie. In fact, right?
Mhm.
Because we have given over our faculty of thinking. We've done it because look at us and what we're happy to give up, all our private information, social media. We look at things like TikTok and whatever they're called, these other things, right? And we're looking. We're
using social. Yeah.
Social media, right? And we're looking. See, one of the most popular things on that is people unboxing things. Like they got a delivery and they're unboxing it. We don't need mind control. Our brains have turned to jello. Look at us. There's this. If what is happening today was happening in the 1950s or the 1920s or 1880s,
like if it was one day 1950s and the next day it was today. With tech suddenly just blossomed everywhere and the controls were in place, there would have been anarchy immediately.
There would be revolutions.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a person from the 1950s, if you take a person from the 1920s or the 1880s or whatever you want, any of those periods, right? And you plonk them into today, they will not believe their eyes. So you have to understand that back in those days, you could buy cocaine or petrol at the apothecary. You just buy it at the chemist.
Opium was there.
Yeah. Why? Because you're an adult. You want to do that? That's up to you. You do what you do in your life. I'm not going to control you, but it's bad for you. But hey, that's your problem, right? And that's really important to understand. If you treat people like adults, they will act like adults, but we don't. We treat them like children. We're living in nanny states, and we're wresting control away from people more and more every day. More and more every day. A person from the 1880s would not stop at a red light. Why? His light changed color. So what? So what? I'm not going to do that. Are you crazy? Why would you do that? The first time I came across it was in a Robert Heinlein book, which is really interesting. A gentleman was dimension hopping. And he came from a world where there were no traffic lights, and he couldn't understand why people were stopping at a traffic light. He just couldn't get it. I mean, there's no policeman there to stop. Why do you stop? Well, it's the convention. Because wow, really, people do that? That's incredible. it really is, though. It is the conditioning we've undergone.
Mackie, I'm so conditioned that I would stop in the middle of the desert at a red light.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even feel stupid.
No, so I'll wait. It's red now. It's probably going to go green sometime, right? So yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, got it. Well, it's been a while now. Maybe I should go. It's the panopticon. It is the concept of the panopticon because you don't know when you're being watched. In fact, you don't even think about that anymore. You're just acting in the conditioned way. You're not thinking about, oh, am I being watched? It is assumed.
Because we're being watched more now than we've ever been watched ever. In the history of ever.
Of ever, yeah. You're right. It is quite the world we live in.
If you catch a plane to England and you get off at Heathrow in London, from there to your hotel, closing the door behind you in your hotel room, you're on camera the entire time.
I believe that.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is.
It's there for our safety. Mackie, it's all there for our safety. We don't have to worry about that because the leader has all that under control. We don't have to worry anymore.
Hooray for the leader!
Yes.
But see, unless of course the cameras malfunction at that critical moment, like in Epstein's cell.
Yes, that's right.
Oh no, it's a malfunction.
And when they accidentally deleted all the other footage.
Yeah, or when the plane crashed into the Pentagon, right? Oh, yeah, we only have frames.
Five frames, yeah.
Yeah, 5, you're right. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean, right?
84 cameras. 84 cameras. And then, they took the camera, the footage from the hotel and across the street at the service station or the gas station. That's never going to see the light of day.
No, it won't.
Right? So, why? Look, if there was nothing awry, then why isn't it all public? If it doesn't match the narrative, that's why it gets tucked away, never to be seen again.
I don't understand the question.
I watched that. I watched something the other day, Mackie, which was extraordinary. I know that Bill Gates was interviewed, and he was, you spend a lot of time with Epstein. So, how did you think about him since you knew he was a convicted criminal? And rather than answering a question, he goes, "Well, he's dead."
Are you serious?
I know, crazy, huh? There's the end of the show.
What do these people have become? They're old dead dudes.
That's what happens.
Full marks. That's the partial credit. 500. Show number 500.
Next week. It's going to be a long show, 4 hours. All right. Catch you then. And stay tuned for Jer Bear's awesome show, After Hours. And we'll catch you next week. Take care, guys.